Special thanks to Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring today's video. And before we get started on the video today, there will of course be spoilers for the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime to come, so just be aware of that as well. Alright, we've talked a lot about Bankai in the past, from the most powerful Bankai to the absolute weakest, the absolute worst, and everything in between. But what about the Bankai that are truly, genuinely deadly to use? The ones that are flat out dangerous, those that pose a serious risk to everyone around them, be that the user, the target, and even anyone in the vicinity. There are some Bankai that are simply dangerous to wield, and some that are, yes, deadly to even activate. And I've always liked that. Some Bankai should be inherently dangerous, not just to those it's being used against, but to the very world itself, if applicable, if it makes sense to. Then it should come with some kind of built-in risk, some kind of threat that means it's not always suited for a particular battle. Of course, as a result of this, some Bankai are much more situational than others, while some leave the wielder totally exposed. In today's video, I want to take a look at the deadliest, the most dangerous Bankai in all of Bleach. Those that pose a danger, not just to the target, but to the user and all those who might be swept up in the Bankai's far-reaching power. This isn't about the Bankai's individual abilities per se, though they might come into play, but much more about the conditions around its use. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the 10 Bankai that are the most dangerous to use in Bleach. As always, remember to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Did I miss any Bankai that you think should have been on here? Before we get started on today's video, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel recently. It does mean so very much to me. On my journey to hit 300,000 subs by the end of 2026, we've got a long way to go yet until the end of the year, and I think it's an attainable goal, but only with your help. So if you want to be a part of that push, then consider hitting subscribe now. Only if you like the content, of course, and you want to see more from it, you want to support the channel, but it does mean a lot. In that same vein, consider supporting me over on Patreon as well. Again, a huge thank you to everyone who has become a patron since the start of the year. It is greatly appreciated, as things have been a little sketchy on YouTube, really since the end of last year, but going into this year, I would say the future is perhaps more unclear than ever, and that's where you can really make a just genuine difference to the longevity and health of the channel, and it is massively appreciated. So thank you all so very much. But again, as always, no matter how you choose to support me, whether that's just being here and watching the videos, engaging with them, dropping a comment, it does mean everything, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you all so very much. And finally, before we can get started, first a word from someone else who's helping to support the channel, and that's today's sponsor. Look, it's the new year, 2026 has begun, it's freezing cold here in the UK, and frankly, if you're just after a bit of cheering up during the post-Christmas winter era, then look no further than the newest boxes from Tokyo Treat and Sakurako, and ring in the new year with some Japanese culture and snacks. Tokyo Treat is an exclusive monthly snack box designed to help you experience a delicious piece of Japanese culture from the comfort of your own home. And this month the theme of the box is of course New Year's snacking, which means it's filled to the brim with snacks that reflect Japan's annual traditions, festivities and more, bringing good luck and the spirit of the new year to your door. Some of the snacks included this month are chocolate mint ice cream Kit Kats, New Year rice crackers, fried potato sticks, and more. In case you didn't know, I'm a huge ice cream mark. I just adore ice cream. Frankly, it's the ultimate dessert. That's a lot mintier than I was anticipating, which I guess doesn't make sense because it's literally mint choc chip ice cream, but it does actually taste like mint choc chip ice cream. So yeah, these are going to go down an absolute treat. See, now this item is an interesting one, and the booklet is helping me out big time here. These are apparently Kinako Mochi chocolates, but I mean, based off of that, I would have thought they were gummies, but then mochi is kind of gummy. Mochi is a very interesting texture if you've never had it before. To get that in the middle of a chocolate was absolutely, well, not really a surprise because obviously the booklet basically told me that, but unusual. Thankfully, very nice all the same. Meanwhile, Sakurako's theme this month is Japan's New Year tradition, which invites you to experience the joy of Oshogatsu, celebrate the country's ancient traditions, and of course look to the future, to the hope that comes with a fresh new year. Some of the snacks included this month are the custard taiyaki, Year of the Horse manju, New Year's okaki, and 7 Lucky Gods cookies. Plus included this month is shiruko, a traditional sweet red bean soup enjoyed during the new year. Not only that, but fittingly for this time of year, the tableware is a little different. It's a Sakurako Wagashi calendar. First up, we have one of 2 custard taiyaki that come in this month's box. They are shaped like fish, and I imagine they're going to be pretty nice. Yeah, as expected, no real surprises here, but these are always delicious. They're a very dense, a very kind of substantial snack, but on its own, it's absolutely lovely. And then the last thing I wanted to try, I was absolutely drawn to this just because of how cool the packet looks. It's this luminous gold. It looks really awesome. These are apparently golden konpeito. And before we crack into this, I think it is imperative that we end this segment by reading this inspirational message on the front of the package, which reads, "It's very delicious konpeito. Let's enjoy nostalgic time." So as you can see, there's a bunch of multicolored candies in there. Again, according to the booklet, these are supposed to resemble stars, I think, which is like a really cool idea. Again, the presentation is immaculate, so let's see what they taste like. As has been mentioned a few times now, each box also comes with a cultural booklet that features snack descriptions, allergen information, and of course some insights into the cultural theming around the month's boxes as well. But that's it for January's boxes. A big thanks to Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for supporting the channel as always. If you're interested in starting off the new year with Japanese snack boxes of your own, then visit the link in either the description or the pinned comment down below and use my code TOMO for an exclusive offer of $5 off of your first order. Not only do you save money, but you directly support the channel as well. Thanks everyone, and enjoy. So, up first, as always, we've got a couple of honourable mentions. These are honourable mentions because, truth be told, I'm not exactly sure how dangerous they are to actually use, but they definitely seem to be on the surface. It's dubious at best, hence why the 2 of them are here and not on the list properly. As they are both very powerful Bankai, don't get me wrong, in fact they are 2 of the most powerful Bankai in the series. But as for how dangerous they are to actually use, well, let's take a look. Up first we have Kenpachi Zaraki's unnamed Bankai, which transforms him into a seemingly mindless berserker, fueled only by a lust for battle. First revealed in his fight with Gerard Valkyrie, Kenpachi's Bankai is granted to him by Yachiru as he lies dying on the ground, and he quickly turns the tables, blitzing the giant and ripping his arm off with ease before splitting him in 2. So why might this be a dangerous Bankai to use? Why might this be an inherently deadly Bankai once activated? And crucially, why is it only an honourable mention? Well, it's hard to tell just how Kenpachi himself has been affected. Is his mind still intact or not, in any shape or form? The manga definitely makes it seem as though Kenpachi has lost control of himself, and Byakuya openly warns Hitsugaya about getting too close to the captain, noting that it's obvious that Kenpachi would be even less receptive to communication than usual. The assumption, then, is that he might attack them as well, as he's now little more than a feral beast. But the reason I've got Kenpachi as an honourable mention is that, well, simply put, I want to give him more credit than that. After witnessing his Bankai in action, it's not hard to see why the other captains are anxious. Kenpachi seems to be acting purely out of instinct, but we don't see any evidence of him turning or even thinking about attacking his allies, and in fact his new animal-like instincts actually warn him ahead of time of Gerard's revival. Kenpachi only shows any inclination towards attacking Gerard, and that's presumably because he is the strongest being around at the time. But even after Gerard appears to be dead, even if only briefly, Kenpachi doesn't just immediately launch into battle with Byakuya and Hitsugaya either. Ultimately, we don't really know or see enough to judge for sure, hence why it's an honourable mention, but like I said, I'm up for giving the captain the benefit of the doubt here. And then the second honourable mention is another one that's very difficult to place, despite being absurdly powerful, and that's Kisuke Urahara's Kanon Biraki Benehime Aratame, and my personal favourite Bankai in the series. Prior to the Bankai being revealed, Kisuke teased its power by warning that it was unsuitable for training other people, which led everyone to wonder how dangerous it might really be. Initially, after seeing what it could do, I never quite understood that take, but nowadays I think I do, and it's why it might be so inherently dangerous to use. Again, this isn't a Bankai that we see much of, but its power restructures everything it touches. We see it restoring Kisuke's destroyed eyes, strengthening his own arm, splitting open Askin's arm, and even allowing Kisuke to create a pathway. It doesn't seem inherently dangerous to use this Bankai initially, but the idea that Kisuke's Bankai has a range is brought up early on, as Askin's arm seems to be dissected almost immediately, only for it to return to normal when the Sternritter flees. I've always wondered about this personally. Should we take it at face value? Or is Kisuke simply luring Askin into a false sense of security here? If it really has a range, how is it operating a pathway from the edge of the Gift Ball Deluxe all the way to their location? The notion I got after seeing Askin's arm close up again was that all the effects of the Bankai's restructuring would be undone immediately once outside its range. Surely that would include the hole in the gift ball the Bankai clearly made. That's why I've always suspected the so-called range was just a ploy by Kisuke to throw Askin off, and to ensure that he wouldn't be suspicious of the Bankai operating that far away. There is another element to this Bankai that I think makes it inherently dangerous too, however, and this is the reason why I don't think it's suitable for training other people. And that's that it seems like whatever changes Kisuke makes thanks to the Bankai are reversed when it's disengaged, even the completely new ones. And what I mean by that is, the stitches on Kisuke's face begin to open and bleed when his Bankai is disengaged, which makes sense, as he used his Bankai to fix his broken eyes, which perhaps implies that it's all going back to the way it once was. However, the stitches on his arm also begin to open up and bleed as well, and that was a change that wasn't done to fix anything that was broken, it was just done to empower his arm. So it seems as though that once the Bankai ends, forcibly or otherwise perhaps, all of the changes Kisuke makes, with it all the restructuring is undone, it comes undone forcibly, and Kisuke begins to bleed out, essentially, as his body reverts back to normal. So it means that Kisuke has to be careful with what he chooses to do with his Bankai in regards to both his own body, but if he were training someone, their body as well. Because when he disengages it, those stitches will open up and he'll bleed and presumably lose those benefits. Though his eyes do still at least appear to be normal in the immediate aftermath. So again, this is a tricky one. One that could be very dangerous, but I'm not totally certain about. Alright, but moving on to our top 10. Some of these may actually be simpler to talk about, as they are a lot more straightforward. Up first we have Soifon's Bankai Jakuho Raikoben, though again even this isn't totally clear cut. This is an example of a Bankai that was once dangerous to use, but no longer seems to be, presumably because Soifon has grown stronger over the course of the manga. Soifon's Jakuho Raikoben, which manifests as an enormous missile launcher on her arm, used to be so dangerous to use that she had to prepare for it beforehand by tying herself to a nearby building using a ginjotan, or a steel sash, to brace for the recoil. Despite that, the initial force of the blast still managed to tear the steel sash and send Soifon hurtling backwards, only saved by her vice-captain, and even then they smashed into a nearby building. So that's pretty wild on its own. But then there's the fact that Jakuho Raikoben used to leave Soifon in a very vulnerable state, as it was so powerful that it drained her of an enormous amount of spirit energy, to the point where she could only normally fire one missile every 3 days. After she's forced to use it twice in one day, thanks to Hachi's plan to injure Baragon, Soifon collapses and falls out of the sky, again having to be rescued by Omaida. So this is a Bankai that absolutely used to be dangerous to wield, but what about nowadays? Well, it definitely seems like Soifon has become stronger and more capable, as we see in the Thousand Year Blood War arc. She no longer uses a Ginjo-tan when preparing to fire her Bankai, and as we see when she manages to strike BG9 with it during the second Quincy invasion, she's capable of conjuring and firing her Bankai even when almost on death's door now. Not only that, but Omaida has also grown strong enough to steady her with just his own physical strength even after she fires the missile. So that's why Jakuho Raikoben comes in at number 10. I think it's worth talking about as it used to be extremely dangerous for Soifon to use her Bankai, but nowadays it seems not so much. The next Bankai is another one that might grow easier to use with experience and training, and that's Rukia Kuchiki's Haka no Togame. When Rukia unleashes her Bankai against Asnod, it's the first time we've ever seen her use it, and it's safe to assume she's not long learned it, which explains the danger that she experiences. Upon releasing Haka no Togame, Rukia swings her icy sword just once, sending a terrifying wave of ice and cold at her enemy that then freezes them down to their very core, all the while carving off the top of Asnod's head and killing the Sternritter almost instantly. That in itself is pretty scary, but what if she'd used it against someone strong enough to survive that initial swing? Because as we see, Rukia herself is transformed as well, becoming a being of pure, glittering ice. In this moment she appears to be completely exposed and vulnerable, and can't simply thaw herself out immediately either. If Rukia tries to thaw herself out too quickly, her entire body is at risk of cracking and shattering, as we see when she almost loses her whole hand as it fractures. Byakuya himself notes that Haka no Togame is a wonderful but difficult Bankai, and one that Rukia needs to handle with incredible care. As long as she has the time and the space to defrost herself slowly and gently, as she does after killing Asnod, she will be fine. But right now she's walking a delicate tightrope every time she uses it. Even Byakuya finds his hand is immediately frozen over when he touches Rukia. But again, this is the very first time we've ever seen Rukia use her Bankai, so it's totally possible, and frankly I expect this to be the case, that over time, as Rukia masters her power, she'll become much more capable with it. In fact, the mobile game Bleach Brave Souls even introduces the idea of a Rukia who 10 years into the future can use her Bankai while moving around freely, which I totally expect to one day be the case. But we haven't actually seen that in the manga, so right now it's highly deadly. Okay, so this next Bankai is currently our first light novel exclusive Bankai, as it originated in Can't Fear Your Own World and hasn't yet been seen in the anime or the manga. Shuhei Hisagi's Fushi no Kojo is a strange Bankai, and one that's extremely dangerous, not just for the target but for the user as well. Unlike Rukia's Bankai, however, where the danger comes mostly as a side effect, and one that can likely be overcome as a result of training, the danger of Fushi no Kojo is completely inherent to its ability, and will always affect Hisagi whenever he uses this power. When using his Bankai, Hisagi and his chosen target are both ensnared by the chains of Kazushini, which wrap around their necks like a noose, a fairly on-the-nose depiction of the danger the fighters now find themselves in. From this point onwards, any injury either fighter receives is immediately healed at the cost of their combined spirit energy, thereby equalizing the battlefield. This means that Hisagi could theoretically fight someone like Kenpachi on even ground, as both of them are weakened in the same way, and Hisagi will be healed by the combined pool of their energy, and that includes Kenpachi's enormous amount of spirit energy, regardless of how badly someone like Kenpachi would overwhelm the vice captain in the actual fight. So this is a bit of a weird one, but I definitely argue it deserves a spot on the list. In a way, you could argue that it actively removes the danger facing Hisagi, but at the same time that is clearly not the case. The Bankai ultimately ends up leaving Hisagi in a totally vulnerable state. It's just that it does the same to his opponent as well. Okay, but in 7th place we have our first Bankai that's just straight up dangerous to all those around, all those who happen to be unlucky enough to be caught in its vicinity upon activation. And that's Mayuri Kurotsuchi's Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo. When Mayuri releases his Bankai, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo takes on the form of an enormous mutated abomination, a golden Jizo but one with the body of a caterpillar who can sprout a forest of blades from its chest. But the most potent power of this Bankai is the extremely toxic gas it spews from its mouth when activated, what seems to be a passive ability of the Bankai that threatens everyone in its radius. The poison is so deadly that Mayuri was absolutely sure Uryu would be killed by it, and the Quincy was only saved by the antidote given to him by Nemu. Later in the Rankar arc, Mayuri uses his Bankai again, this time against Xyloporo, who takes the full force of the poison. Even so, both Uryu and Renji are still infected as well, and again required the antidote to save their lives. In the Thousand Year Blood War arc, when Mayuri reveals he's about to release his Bankai, Ikaku and Yumichika fear for their lives due to the poisonous smog and race to get their incapacitated captain out of the way in time. Mayuri reveals as well that he changes the compound of the poison before each fight, meaning it's impossible for the average person to develop antibodies for it after exposure. So yeah, this is a pretty straightforward one, but this is the first Bankai on the list to have an immediate passive effect that happens upon activation that impacts everyone on the immediate battlefield. And just like that, as we approach the top 5, we move on to the truly dangerous Bankai to use. Those that where the simple activation can plunge the world into chaos and ensnare everyone in the vicinity of their terrible power. In 6th place, we have a Bankai from the Zero Division, Shutara Senjumaru's Shatatsu Karagara Shigarami no Suji, a Bankai that was revealed thanks to the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime. For starters, even releasing this Bankai brings with it some level of inherent danger. Thanks to the Blood Oath Seal, the individual members of the Zero Division are unable to release their Bankai while the other members are alive, a pact placed on each of them to prevent their combined power from potentially destroying the world. And we see a glimpse of this power in the anime. In order for Senjumaru to use her Bankai, the other Zero Division members, Oetsu, Tenjiro, and Hikifune, all kill themselves to release the Blood Oath Seal. And even then, the mere activation of her Bankai causes all 3 worlds to shake. This might seem like a huge deal, but actually the reason this Bankai isn't placed higher on the list is that, well, as we see in the anime itself, the release of her Bankai alone, while crazy, isn't enough to seemingly cause any actual damage to the worlds themselves. That being said, from the perspective of her targets, this is a very dangerous Bankai. Senjumaru can seemingly envelop as many people as she wants in her Bankai's power, as she uses it to take down and imprison 6 extraordinarily powerful Quincy in one go, which is absurd. But moving into the top 5, this is where things get, well, I would say crazy, although Senjumaru's Bankai is pretty crazy too, but I've put this particular Bankai at number 5, because unlike the Bankai above it, it's not quite so well defined as to how dangerous this Bankai really is to use, only that it clearly is, and in myriad different ways. So in 5th place, we have Soya Azashiro's Bankai, Yurozakuro, which is maybe one of the single strangest Bankai in all of Bleach. Now this Bankai originates from the light novel Spirits Are Forever With You, and is truly unlike any other Bankai in the series. Azashiro's Zanpakuto relies entirely on its Bankai, and unlike every other Zanpakuto in Bleach, the Bankai is constantly active. Yurozakoro's power fuses with its surroundings completely, including even the air, enabling Azashiro to control everything he comes into contact with. Even Azashiro's inner world is completely fused with the outer world around him. In the light novel, it's revealed that Azashiro spent years fusing his Bankai with the Seirete itself, transforming the Seirete into an extension of his very being. Asashiro is even capable of fusing with another living person and destroying their body, though doing so injures Asashiro too. Here's the thing with this Bankai, it's extremely weird, and of course immensely dangerous to simply exist around. But it's also a very precarious Bankai too, and frankly situation, for Asashiro himself to exist in. He's very susceptible, while fused, to any ability that can absorb matter of any kind, like for example Yumachika's True Shikai, or a Quincy's inherent ability to absorb Reishi. All of this poses a real threat to Asashiro. So yeah, this is a totally weird one. Honestly, it could probably be higher than this, due to Asashiro's capacity to fuse with everything, but for now I'm happy with it being at number 5. Moving on, in 4th place, we have Shinji Hirako's Bankai Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fusagari, which is maybe the most situational Bankai on this list, but there's a good reason for that. Where Shinji's Shikai, Sakanade, is perfect for one-on-one encounters with powerful enemies, his Bankai is better suited to dealing with enormous groups of enemies at once. In fact, Shinji can only use his Bankai when surrounded by enemies, and has to ensure his allies are far away, lest he risk them getting caught up in its power. Shinji's Bankai flips the perception of friend and foe for everyone caught within its power, turning allies into enemies the moment they fall victim to the Bankai. Upon activation, Shinji himself is sealed within a giant golden flower at the epicenter, protecting him from his Bankai's effects. From there, a pink mist seeps out of the flower, and anyone who is caught within the mist experiences the Bankai's effects, turning them against their allies. With his Bankai, Shinji caused an entire squad of Soldat to kill each other, and in Can't For Your Own World, he used his power to decimate a massive horde of Hollows, watching as they tore each other to pieces. In fact, the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime heavily implies that Shinji planned to use his Bankai in the event the rest of the Bambis came to help Bambietta when she was struggling against his Shikai, and in that situation, Shinji could have quite easily killed the bulk of them. So yeah, this is a very dangerous power. If Shinji used his Bankai with allies around, they will turn on each other, meaning he has to wait until the precise moment to actually use it. And even then, it's not going to be easy to get a ton of value from it unless there's a good number of enemies around. While a decent demonstration, I kind of wish that Shinji had taken out even more Soldat in the anime, as I feel like he's strong enough to have killed that group without Bankai, but there you go, at least we got to see it. But with that, we've reached the top 3 most dangerous Bankai in Bleach to use. These are the Bankai where, if truly used incorrectly, they will almost certainly result in the death of either the user, their allies, or both. Up first, then, in 3rd place, we have Kyoraku Shunsui's Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju, a deadly theatre production that is seemingly almost impossible to escape. There are a few reasons why this Bankai only slots in at 3rd, despite its high capacity for disaster. Namely, I don't think it's quite as dangerous to wield as the top 2, but also because the parameters of this Bankai are still somewhat murky. We know the Bankai has a range, and that it seemingly traps everyone caught in its power in this deadly narrative, but how exactly does that work? Kyoraku ensures that he is far enough away from the rest of the Gotei 13 pretty much as he can possibly get before using it, and yet still worries that Nanao might get caught up in it as he assumes that she's on her way back to him. Plus, Ukitake warned against him using his Bankai in the fake Karakura town. But again, how does this work? How does Kyoraku ensure that Lille is the only person caught by the Bankai's power? We see characters all across Varvelt experiencing the Bankai's initial area of effect, including Ichigo, Askin, Orihime, Chad, and more, but none of them are actually in the Bankai. Now, the Bankai of each elder so far has had some kind of an effect on the wider area around them. Kyoraku's gives everyone the chills and a feeling of unease, even if they're not actively involved, while Unohana's drenches the battlefield in blood, and Yamamoto's heats up the very air across a space as wide as the Serete. But it's clearly dangerous enough that where he uses it is a major consideration of use for Kyoraku himself. And then, as with his Shikai, Kyoraku is forced to be a participant in his Bankai too, though unlike his Shikai where he's playing an actual game with the enemy and both must adhere to the rules, he definitely seems to be more in control of the Bankai. And although he's a character in the story, he's very much leading Leal through it. How at risk Kyoraku is of his own Bankai is hard to say, but it definitely seems as though there are numerous points where he could find himself in serious trouble. For example, Act 1 of the story sees the wounds both participants have suffered in their battle so far reflected upon the opponent, thus triggering the second act. And the second act is only triggered for Leal because Kyoraku was the only one wounded prior to the Bankai's activation. But if his enemy was injured at the same time, it might give Kyoraku pause for even using his Bankai at all. Then there's the third act, which plunges both fighters into an abyss of freezing cold water designed to sap their resolve. Again, as with his Shikai, Kyoraku is at an inherent advantage here, because he knows what to expect, but he's still under the effects of this ability, and his spirit energy is still running out beneath the surface of the water. So yeah, this is a tricky one, fittingly for this Bankai, but it definitely seems to be one of the most dangerous Bankai to wield in the series, usable only by someone of Kyoraku's skill and experience, but crucially also by someone who's willing to take the risk. In second place, we have another Bankai that comes from the light novels, Kenpachi Kurayashiki's Gagaku Kairo, which conjures an enormous pair of jaws from the very ground itself. Interestingly, Gagaku Kairo is a fairly simple Bankai, but I think that actually emphasises the danger that comes with using it. Unfortunately, this is another Bankai that we know very little about in regards to the parameters surrounding its use, but I think we know enough. The massive jaws of Gagaku Kairo are endlessly ravenous and will devour absolutely everything in their path without prejudice, save for Kurayashiki himself. The jaws will consume everything they come into contact with, both living and inanimate, to the point where the usage of this Bankai within the confines of the Serete has been outright banned by the Central 46, presumably because once released there would be no way of stopping it from devouring the entire city and all of the Shinigami within, without Kurayashiki's intervention. So monstrously powerful is this Bankai that once disengaged, Kurayashiki can't release it again for another 6 months. The reason this Bankai isn't number 1, however, is twofold. Firstly, I simply think the Bankai ahead of it is inherently more dangerous, but crucially, secondly, we don't really know the full scope of Gagaku Kairo. For example, could an equally powerful Shinigami, or a more powerful Shinigami, stop the jaws in their tracks with an ability of their own? Or is it a hard and fast rule that the jaws would just eat everything and nothing can stop them? To be totally honest, if that were the case, if the jaws cannot be stopped, save for by Kurayashiki himself, then actually I think this probably would take the number 1 spot. But we simply don't know. Asashiro himself, whose own Bankai just made the 5th spot on this list, believed that he would have been defeated by Kurayashiki if the captain had used his Bankai, likely because even if he was fused with everything around him, it simply wouldn't matter if Gagaku Kairo was just devouring all that it came across. So yeah, this could be number 1, because of its unrelenting hunger, because nothing can seemingly stand in its way, but we simply don't know enough. And so in first place, and I am pretty happy with this, the most dangerous Bankai to simply use in Bleach, and you probably saw this coming to some degree, is none other than Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto's Zanka no Tachi, a Bankai with the power to destroy the Soul Society itself. When Yamamoto releases his Bankai, everything changes. The very air of the Soul Society begins to heat up dramatically, to the point where fighters spread out across the Serete feel it immediately. The heat is so immense, even early on, that it completely shuts down Hitsugaya's own Bankai, rendering the ice totally ineffective. Unohana, who knows Yamamoto and his capabilities perhaps better than anyone else, notes that if the head captain didn't finish the fight soon, the overwhelming power of his Bankai would destroy the Soul Society. The Soul Society, by the way, not just the Serete, which is an important distinction. And this is on top of everything the Bankai can actually do. The power to destroy the Soul Society is simply a passive result of the immense heat ebbing and flowing from the activation of the Bankai. Zanka no Tachi has a litany of actual abilities at its disposal too. I know I said earlier that we weren't really going to talk about the individual abilities, but a single touch from Zanka no Tachi East is enough to wipe a huge portion of the battlefield out of existence entirely, while Yamamoto himself erases things off the face of the planet when using Zanka no Tachi West. Royd comments that were it not for his blue vein, simply standing near Yamamoto while the head captain was wreathed in his cloak of fire would have reduced the Quincy to ash. But it doesn't stop there. Once he uses Zanka no Tachi West, Yamamoto himself comments that he'll burn up not just all of the Soul Society but himself as well if he remains in this form for too long. Now, we don't know how long that is precisely, but we can make some educated guesses, considering both he and Unohana appear concerned by the mere fact that he's using it. I don't think it would take an enormous amount of time. From the moment of activation, almost all of the water around across the Serete is evaporated instantly. So, considering this video is looking at the most dangerous Bankai to actually use, this really does feel like it fits the bill perfectly. This is a Bankai whose mere activation puts the lives of every single person around it, including Yamamoto himself, at risk from the moment it is used. In my opinion, that's enough to make this the most dangerous Bankai in Bleach, but as you can see, there are a fair few contenders for the title. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How do you feel about the most dangerous Bankai to use in Bleach? Do you agree with my list at all, or do you think I'm completely off base? Maybe you think I'm totally wrong, I've missed some major Bankai. Do let me know down in the comments below, I would love to hear it. One Bankai I was considering, but that didn't actually make the list, was Rose's Kinshara Butodan, because presumably you do fall under its influence the moment you hear its musical melody, but again, we just don't really know enough, and even after that, it's not inherently dangerous to be used because Rose then still has to activate its abilities even once you're hearing the music. But I was thinking about adding it, so I thought I'd just give it a little mention here. Again, the same is kind of true of Tosen Suzumushi Sakishiki Enma Korigi. The mere activation of this Bankai isn't inherently dangerous in itself. If Tosen then did nothing after that, the person affected by the Bankai would simply just be waiting in the dark with none of their senses working. It's not inherently dangerous when used, but again, any of these Bankai could make it with the right argument, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Alright, but once again, thank you all so very much for watching. It really does mean an awful lot. Consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd love to have you on the channel. It really would be wonderful in 2026 to hit that 300,000 subscriber goal. Check out the Patreon as well. Again, your support over there would be massively appreciated. Right now, you can support me for as little as $1 a month. The $2 tier is the most popular one, and it gets you every single one of my videos completely free of YouTube ads. And also, as an additional note, Jujutsu Kaisen is back on the channel. Yes, it's been a little while. It's been over a year, in fact. In that video, I do explain it. I do apologize about it. But yes, we're going to be live reacting to every single episode of Season 3, The Culling Game Part 1, as they release. So please go and check that video out as well if you're a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen, or if maybe you think you could be interested, let me know your thoughts as well. I'd love to know. Alright everyone, we're going to end as always by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. Each and every one of you is helping to make this channel a reality still, and I do appreciate all of you so very much. Also, it's a great place, by the way, to talk to me one-on-one about Bleach. There's always so many comments here on YouTube that I can only get round to a few of them every now and then. That's a great place to discuss Bleach with me if you want to do so. So again, thank you all so very much. Your support does mean the absolute world. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.